Have you ever felt a deep connection with someone after just a few encounters they made you believe at last someone truly gets you? But then slowly everything began to crack from the inside. It's not because you're weak. It's possible you crossed paths with a hidden psychopath, someone pulling the strings of your mind like a skilled puppeteer. They don't look different from anyone else. In fact, they often appear more charming, more confident, and more polished than most people around you. With a charismatic smile and smooth conversation, they draw you in effortlessly. But behind that sleek exterior lies a predator. Psychopaths live among us every single day, camouflaged as friends, lovers, co-workers, even family members. And the scariest part, you won't realize the damage they've done until you're emotionally drained, mentally scattered, questioning your own reality, while they've already moved on to their next target. According to experts, roughly 1 in 100 people exhibit psychopathic traits. That means you've probably already met one, or worse, you're dealing with one right now. And unless you know what signs to look for, you'll remain vulnerable to their manipulation, being gaslit, blamed, and exploited while they feel zero remorse. But here is the good news, you're not powerless. In this video, in breaking down 5 unmistakable signs that you're dealing with a psychopath, and more importantly, why you need to walk away the moment you recognize them. These aren't just clinical definitions. They're real-world red flags backed by lived experiences you may have already gone through or are living through right now. Every second of this video matters. Miss even one and you could lose years of your life to emotional abuse, broken trust, and shattered self-worth. That's what they do best. But today, we put an end to it. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and prepare yourself, because what you're about to learn might change the way you see everything. Let's begin with the first sign. Superficial charm and a dangerously perfect introduction. Have you ever met someone who, within just a few minutes, made you feel like you've known them forever? They tuned into your energy instantly, your humor, your hobbies, even your insecurities. It's like they were custom designed to fit your heart. And you thought, finally, someone who truly sees me. They remembered tiny details you casually mentioned, showed up when no one else did, and said all the right things at just the right moments. It felt uncanny, like fate. But don't be fooled. It's not destiny, it's strategy, a carefully crafted plan. Psychopaths don't invade your life with threats or aggression. They walk in wearing charm like a disguise, charm so refined that you mistake it for love, but it's not. It's manipulation with a smile. They're not connecting with you, they're studying you. Every compliment shared, interest, and thoughtful gesture is a tool helping them dig deeper into your psyche. They're learning how you think, what you crave, what you fear. Not because they care, but because they're mapping out how to control you. And the moment you begin to trust, that's the moment they start to take control. In the next part, we'll explore how they begin to isolate you from the people around you quietly, systematically, and with chilling precision. When you start to feel deeply understood, adored, even convinced that someone was made for you, pause. Because what feels like a rare connection might actually be a carefully calculated plan. This is reconnaissance, and they execute it with precision. Psychopaths are emotional tacticians, not because they feel deeply, but because they've mastered the art of imitation. From a young age, they learn if they can mirror your values, your dreams, your emotional vulnerabilities. They can lower your defenses and earn your trust. Here is how it plays out. You casually mention feeling burned out at work, and suddenly there, the one person who seems to fully understand what you're going through. Feels like a real connection, doesn't it? But it's not. It's them identifying a weakness, one they can exploit later. You offhandedly say you're into true crime documentaries. A few days later, they plan a themed movie night, complete with snacks and references to tiny details you barely remember saying. At first you're touched, it feels like genuine thoughtfulness. But look closer. This isn't about shared joy. It's about control. They're building a fast illusion of intimacy, because the faster you let your guard down, the easier you are to manipulate. That's how love bombing works. It's not wild or chaotic like in the movies. It's systematic. You're showered with attention, affection, and availability. The texts come non-stop. Promises of a future together roll out within weeks. You start to believe you're special. But the truth is all of that affection only lasts as long as you follow the script. The moment you push back, delay a reply, question something they said, the mask begins to slip. Suddenly, the warmth disappears. They grow cold, annoyed, distant. And you start questioning yourself, what did I do wrong? That's your first red flag. Superficial charm that vanishes the second you stop giving them what they want. It's confusing because it all felt so real. But the painful truth is you were never in love with a real person. You were interacting with a carefully crafted person. You weren't in a relationship. You were in a transaction. And when that transaction no longer benefits them, they walk away. Fast, clean, like they were never there. Psychologically, the aftermath is brutal. You begin to doubt your memory. You convince yourself they're just having a rough day. Maybe you overreacted, but here's what you need to understand. That emotional whiplash, it's not a glitch. It's a feature. A control tactic. They keep you guessing off balance. Always chasing the version of them you thought was real. And when you're lost in confusion, you're easier to manipulate. So how do you protect yourself? This is where Stoic philosophy becomes your light in the dark. One of the core tenets of Stoicism is to distinguish between what you can control and what you can't. A Stoic doesn't try to control others. We just talked about a core principle of Stoic philosophy, distinguishing between what we can control and what we cannot. And in a relationship with a psychopath, the one thing you can always control is yourself. A person who lives by the Stoic mindset doesn't try to change others. They focus on mastering themselves. That means when you feel your emotions being pulled, you need to recognize it. When you feel overwhelmed by charm or suddenly met with coldness, pause. Don't react immediately. Observe the facts, breathe, and ask yourself, am I being loved or am I being studied? When someone comes on too fast, too sweet, too perfect, be cautious. Real connection takes time to build. It comes from mutual understanding, from gentle friction, from imperfection. If someone always agrees with you, always praises you, always knows what you want, and there's never any difference, that's not authenticity. That's manipulation. Trust your intuition, because sometimes your body senses the truth before your mind can process it. That strange, uneasy feeling when someone seems too good to be true, that's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition. Your brain is picking up on subtle signals that haven't reached your conscious awareness yet, but they're real. You don't need to panic. You don't need to argue. You just need to stay grounded. Observe. Take a step back and let time peel away mask, because a psychopath cannot wear their mask forever. Once you set a boundary, once you disrupt their control, their true self will begin to show. The essence of Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about understanding them and not allowing anyone else to control them for you. You can still be kind, still be open. But you must do so with eyes wide open, not blindly. Remember, not every connection is real. Some relationships aren't love, they're traps dressed in shining lights. If someone's affection feels more like a spotlight than a warm fire, if it's too intense, too perfect, too fast, stop. That might be the first sign, because that charm is not a gift, it's bait. And the sooner you see it, the sooner you can protect yourself from the storm that follows. That was the first sign. Now we move on to the second warning, clearer, more uncomfortable, but just as dangerous: pathological lying and psychological manipulation. You're sitting in the car, phone in hand, heart racing. You're certain Matt said those words yesterday, you remember them word for word, but now he firmly denies it. Not only that, he gently suggests that maybe you misunderstood, overreacted, or even imagined the whole conversation. Hayes, calm, confident, assured, and you feel like you're spinning. You begin to doubt yourself. Did I mishear? Am I overreacting? Maybe I am just being too sensitive. And this is exactly how pathological lying and psychological manipulation show up in real life. Not as vague concepts, but as repeated experiences that slowly erode your trust and your reality. If you've ever found yourself in a situation like this, you are not alone, because this is the second sign that you may be dealing with a psychopath. And the reason this kind of manipulation is so dangerous is because it doesn't just confuse you, it reshapes the way you experience reality. People like Matt don't lie in the usual sense. This isn't lying to avoid trouble or to save face. This is strategic lying by instinct. They lie even when it's not necessary, even when the truth would be simpler and more reasonable. Why? Because lying gives them a sense of power. Whoever controls the story controls your perception. And once they control your perception, it's only a matter of time before they control you. They invent stories as effortlessly as breathing fluid smooth without hesitation. Stories about their past, their friends, their jobs, their emotions. Maybe you heard them talk about a traumatic childhood accident and you genuinely felt sympathy. But over time, the details start to shift. What was once an unexpected mishap becomes a dramatic betrayal. Just like their family stories today, it's a strict father tomorrow. It's a neglectful mother. You begin to sense that something's off. But every time you speak up, they twist the narrative and react in a way that makes you feel guilty. They might get angry or play the victim. Either way, the result is the same. You're the one made to feel at fault. And this is where things escalate to their most toxic form. Gaslighting, psychological manipulation that makes you question yourself. They say something cruel, then deny ever saying it. They make promises, then claim they never agreed. They provoke you, then accuse you of being too sensitive when you react. Slowly, you lose trust in your own instincts. You hesitate to speak up. You begin to censor your thoughts through a fog of and eventually you start to lose yourself. Let's return to Matt. He tells you that your co-worker Jen has been talking about you behind your back. He says it out of concern. But behind your back, he tells Jen that you are the one who has a problem. With her, he plants seeds of conflict on both sides, then sits back and watches as you both lose trust in each other, silently enjoying the chaos he created. So what's the result? You become isolated. You start to doubt everyone and everything. And the only person who seems to understand you, the only one by your side, is him. But that's not comfort. That's a trap. A script he orchestrated to keep you under his control. This tactic is known as triangulation, manipulating by creating a triangle of conflict. It's extremely effective. It severs you from your support system while placing them at the emotional center of your life. From a psychological perspective, you're dealing with someone who completely lacks morality. They don't have an inner compass that helps them distinguish right from wrong like you do. They don't wrestle with guilt. They don't lose sleep over hurting others, because to them it's just a tool. And that is the most terrifying truth, a person who can manipulate and break you without feeling a shred of remorse. Their lies are not slips of the tongue. They are weapons wielded with the precision of a scalpel. These people understand the emotional weight of every word, and they know that if they mix in just enough truth with the lie, you'll believe it. They study you. They learn how you perceive reality, and once they find the version of truth you're most likely to accept, they cling to it, repeating it with chilling conviction even when you catch them red-handed. So what can you do when you realize you're trapped in a mental manipulation game? This is where Stoic philosophy becomes your lifeline. One of the core principles of Stoicism is distinguishing between what lies within your control and what doesn't. You can't control how someone else distorts the truth. You can't force them to be honest. But you can control your own response. Stoicism doesn't teach us to be indifferent or emotionless. It teaches emotional discipline, meaning you observe without reacting immediately. Take a step back. Ask yourself, is this real or is this a manipulation tactic? You don't need to argue to win. You don't need to prove you're right. What you need to do is protect your mind, protect your clarity, protect your peace. Write things down. Document conversations, date specific events, not to use as evidence against them, but to keep your reality intact. When the lies begin to pile up, when your mind starts to waver, those records will ground your logic. Talk to people you truly trust. People outside the manipulator's influence. They'll help you remember who you are. They'll remind you of what really happened. Because when you're too close to a manipulator, you can no longer see yourself clearly. And above all, when you notice a repeating pattern, distorted truths, blurred memories, that uneasy feeling, every time you ask a question, call it what it is, psychological warfare. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are being systematically destabilized by someone who views your confusion as an opportunity to control you. They make you doubt yourself so they can more easily steer your behavior. And that is the second unmistakable sign: pathological lying and psychological manipulation. This isn't just a red flag. It's a call to action. Leave as soon as you can. Because the longer you stay, the further you drift from your own reality. And once that happens, the road back is more painful, longer, and full of scars. If what you've heard so far feels like a wake-up call, comment yes below. I want to hear from you because your story may help someone else feel less alone. Now we move on to the third sign, and it's one of the most chilling of all, a lack of empathy and emotional depth. Have you ever opened up your heart to someone? Shared your pain, your heartbreak, your deepest fears, only to be met with a blank stare or a response that felt overly polished, almost rehearsed, so much so that it gave you chills. You sat there, emotionally exposed, hoping to be understood, but instead it felt like you were talking to a wall. And in that very moment when you showed your true vulnerability, and they responded as if they were watching a movie instead of feeling with you, that's when you begin to realize you are with someone who lacks the ability to feel your pain. That's the third sign. A psychopath doesn't lack awareness of emotion. They can observe it, but they do not feel it. Psychopaths can recognize emotions, label them, even mimic them with uncanny accuracy. But they don't feel them, at least not in the way a normal human being would. What you're experiencing with them isn't connection. It's a performance. Imagine watching a play. The actor is flawless. The lines are perfect. The expressions are right. On cue, everything is technically correct, and yet something is missing. Something invisible but unmistakable. What's missing is human warmth, the soul of empathy. Empathy is the heartbeat of emotional connection. It's what makes us flinch when we see someone get hurt. It's what allows us to sit in silence with someone who's grieving and feel their sorrow deep in our own chest. But psychopaths lack that ability. They are emotionally deaf. They view your emotions like someone watching a muted movie. They can describe what's happening, repeat the storyline, but they don't feel any of it. That's why their responses to your pain can feel disturbingly off. When you're anxious or heartbroken, they might offer advice that sounds logical but feels completely hollow, or worse, they get irritated because your distress is an inconvenience to their comfort. They don't see your sadness as something to hold space for. They see it as a disruption. This emotional emptiness isn't just hard to grasp, it's dangerous. Because in their eyes, people are not individuals with worth or dignity. You're a tool. If you're useful, you stay. If you're not, you're discarded. That's it. Don't confuse this with ordinary selfishness. Selfish people can still feel guilt. They can still regret hurting others. But a psychopath doesn't. To them, your emotions are just data, something to observe, to store, and eventually use. You'll start to notice it in small but chilling moments. You're grieving a loved one and they make a cold joke. You share something that broke you and they look bored. This isn't emotional immaturity. It's a window into a mind that operates completely differently from yours. And then you'll try harder. You'll explain more. You'll share deeper, hoping that if you're sincere enough, emotional enough, they'll finally understand. But they won't, and they can't. Even in their closest relationships, they lack the emotional depth required for true connection. They might fake love convincingly for months, even years. But eventually the mask slips. They grow irritated by your emotional needs. They become cold, distant, and you're left wondering what changed. But the truth is, nothing changed. You simply stopped being useful, or they simply got tired of acting. And what makes it all even more cruel when you reveal your deepest wounds? They don't embrace them. they store them. That one thing you confided in them late one night. The thing that made you feel like I can trust this person becomes ammunition. But one day when you're hurting, they'll use it against you. They'll twist it to shame you, to break you. That moment when they use your pain as a weapon says everything you need to know. So how do you protect yourself from such emotional emptiness? How do you avoid being pulled deeper into a relationship that's nothing but a well-rehearsed performance? This is where Stoic philosophy offers a powerful lens. As the Roman philosopher Seneca once said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And when you fall into a relationship with someone who lacks the ability to empathize, your imagination begins to fill in the emotional gaps. You want to believe they care. You explain away every cold or distant behavior as them trying in their own way. You see crumbs as love. You confuse cold analysis with genuine concern. But Stoic philosophy doesn't allow us to live in illusions. It teaches us to stand firmly in reality, not to cling to what we wish were true, when it clearly isn't. If someone repeatedly meets your pain with indifference or only acts out of self-interest, believe them. Don't chase the potential you've created. In your mind, look at the patterns they keep repeating. What you can control is your own emotional clarity. Pay attention to how you feel when you're around them, not just during the highs, but in your lowest moments. When you're hurting, do they move closer with warmth or pull away because your feelings bother them? Do they use your emotions as a bridge to connect or a lever to manipulate? Stop waiting for empathy to show up in places it's never existed. Protect your emotional truth. Don't try to fix someone who doesn't even acknowledge that there's a problem. Now ask yourself, have you ever been in a relationship where you felt emotionally alone even when the other person was sitting right next to you? Have you ever opened up and shared the deepest parts of your soul only to receive a lecture or a half smile in return? Have you ever felt like your pain was being observed instead of shared? If any of that resonates, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. How did you recognize that lack of empathy what finally woke you up? And if this video is helping you connect the dots, hit subscribe now, because you're not just watching a video, you're taking back your emotional power. You're becoming someone who sees clearly, acts wisely, and protects your inner peace. Now we come to the fourth unmistakable sign: a parasitic lifestyle and the systematic exploitation of others. And the scariest part, it doesn't begin with clear-cut abuse. It starts quietly, casually. A borrowed car, a one-week stay that turns into months, a credit card just for emergencies. They never say they're taking from you. They call it sharing, supporting each other, building a future together. But the truth is much darker. You're not in a partnership. You're being harvested. This is the fourth sign of a psychopath: a parasitic lifestyle and intentional exploitation. Not the kind of person who leans on others temporarily during hard times, but someone who builds their entire life by stepping on the kindness of others. They don't see your time, your money, your energy, or your space as yours. In their eyes, it's their resource to access, drain, and discard. Now, imagine you meet someone like Erin. She's charismatic, ambitious, always talking about new business ideas, travel plans, and an exciting, adventurous future. At first, everything feels captivating. Erin makes you believe that life could be brighter, bigger, and full of exciting possibilities waiting to be explored. She has vision, she has ambition, and most of all, she makes you feel like an irreplaceable part of that future she's painting. But then each of those glittering dreams comes with a price. There's always something in the way: an investor who suddenly backs out, a family emergency, a temporary cash flow issue. And every time the one who comes to the rescue is you. The troubling part is she never frames it as needing help. Know the way. She speaks, makes you believe it's an opportunity to build something great together. So you lend her some money. She promises to pay you back next week, then next month, then never mentions it again. You let her crash at your place for a few nights, and gradually she stays. No rent, no contribution, and subtly your home becomes hers. What's scary is your boundaries. Don't get shattered all at once. They're infiltrated slowly, bit by bit. A small favor, a convenient help, and then one day you look around and realize all your limits have disappeared. A psychopath doesn't just take. They believe they're entitled to take. That's the difference. They don't see your sacrifice as kindness. They see it as a debt the world owes them, and they feel zero guilt draining you dry. In their eyes, people are resources: emotional, financial, social. They're like parasites attaching to you, draining you, and falling off the moment you're no longer useful. This pattern is almost formulaic. They idealize you, you're the one, their perfect match. Once you're attached, they begin to devalue you. Subtle digs, comparisons, skeptical looks. After they've taken everything they want, they leave coldly, abruptly, often when you need them most. But they rarely leave completely. They leave behind traces, a Netflix password, an Uber account, or worse, a key to your home still sitting in their pocket just in case. What seems like carelessness is actually strategy. Backup tools in case they ever want to come back and take more. And you're not just financially depleted. You're empty inside. You start doubting your own intuition. You ask yourself, why didn't I see this coming? But the truth is, they're very skilled at identifying people who are willing to give. They don't pick victims at random. They look for compassion, for success, for signs of recent vulnerability. Maybe you just went through a breakup. Maybe you lost someone. Maybe you're starting over. They read those signs like a hunter tracking footprints, and they feel no shame about it. In their mind, if you were smart enough, you wouldn't have let them into your life in the first place. That's the cruelty of their logic. They hurt you, but blame you for letting it happen. Psychologically, this type of person operates with a hollow sense of self, often masked by constant confidence or relentless charm. They don't build real connections. They create purposed real connections designed to serve their agenda. And in the next section, we'll dig even deeper. Why do they never feel remorse? And what happens when you start pulling back your power from their control once you no longer serve their purpose? Your value in their eyes drops to zero. And it's precisely here that Stoic philosophy can become the shield that protects your soul. The philosopher Epictetus once said wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. With psychopaths, their hunger is bottomless. No amount of love, help, money, or sacrifice will ever be enough. Because they don't crave connection, they crave control. You can't give enough to fill their emptiness. You can't heal the void inside their soul, but you can protect yourself. Stoicism teaches us to place peace above possessions, virtue above validation. And when you realize someone keeps taking more than they give, when your boundaries are being tested again and again, that's not the time to keep explaining your limits. That's the time to hold those boundaries with wisdom, not anger. Because once you clearly see the pattern of exploitation, you no longer owe them access to your life. Call it what it is. This isn't thoughtlessness. It's a deliberate system of exploitation, and you're the one paying the price. Reclaim your time, your space, your money, your self-respect. Because in the eyes of a psychopath, your kindness is just a resource to be mined. And the longer you hesitate to set boundaries, the more they'll take. Seeing it early is the only way to walk away with the most intact version of yourself. That was the fourth unmistakable sign, a parasitic lifestyle and systematic exploitation. And now we arrive at the final warning, a sign that's perhaps the most visibly obvious, even from a distance, even before you get too close. Impulsivity and a refusal to take responsibility, even when the harm is undeniable. There's a certain type of person whose life always feels like it's teetering on the edge of chaos. No job ever lasts. Their relationship history is full of broken promises. Every story they tell involves betrayal, unfairness, or bad luck, and the one thing they all have in common: they're never the one at fault. Spend enough time around them and you'll find yourself up messes you didn't make, carrying responsibilities you never agreed to, and worse, apologizing for things you didn't even do. This is the fifth and final sign: impulsivity and a chronic refusal to take responsibility. Unlike the slow, calculated manipulation seen in the previous signs, this one carries a sense of chaos, haste, and even panic. Psychopaths crave stimulation like a drowning person craves air. They can't stand boredom. They hate stability. So they chase the next thrill, regardless of who gets hurt in the process. A new job, a sudden cross-country move, a reckless relationship that begins the same day they meet someone. They live moment to moment, with no thought for the consequences, and the shattered pieces they leave for someone else to pick up. That someone is you. Take someone like Jason. At first glance, haze, magnetic, always buzzing with big ideas, bold startups, adventurous plans. But behind that charm is a trail of wreckage. He jumps from one project to another, never finishing anything. Borrows money and never pays it back. Stays at friends' places long past the welcome, and says sorry like it's his morning greeting. It's never his fault. The investor pulled out. His ex was too controlling. His boss didn't understand his vision. That's exactly what makes this kind of person so dangerous. It's not just the chaos, it's the denial of reality. A normal person, when they make a mistake, will stop and reflect. They feel guilty. They try to make it right. Or, at the very least, they learn something. But a psychopath, they rewrite the story to make themselves the victim. They dodge responsibility like it's an allergy, and they do it so convincingly that you might actually start to believe them. You'll find yourself defending them, making excuses for them, trying to understand them, while you're slowly draining yourself and losing your peace. Psychologically, this reflects something much deeper than immaturity or bad habits. It's the sign of a broken moral compass where personal pleasure always outweighs the harm done to others. They don't have an inner break. There's no pause between desire and action. They act first and only consider taking responsibility if they're ever forced to face consequences. And even then, they are never the one to blame. This lack of accountability isn't random. It's a deliberate life strategy. It allows them to keep moving forward with no emotional weight, no repair, no self-reflection. And this is where Stoic philosophy speaks once again. The philosopher Chrysippus once said, "He who errs in action has already erred in thought." When you're caught in someone else's storm, it's easy to start thinking the chaos around you is your fault, that you weren't good enough, not patient enough, not supportive enough. But Stoicism teaches us to separate ourselves from another person's dysfunction. Their erratic behavior is not your burden to carry. You will not find peace by trying to stabilize someone who thrives on instability. When someone's life is a cycle of self-destruction, and they expect you to always be the one to catch them, it's not just instability, it's shameless entitlement. You'll see it in the times they demand forgiveness without ever apologizing. Their desire for commitment without offering consistency. Their need for support without giving anything in return. You'll hear it in their stories where they're always the victim and never the one at fault. And you'll feel it in the chronic exhaustion of constantly having to explain away their behavior, in the discomfort of being blamed, just for saying no, in the guilt they project onto you, simply for daring to set boundaries. And above all, you'll find yourself completely destabilized by their emotional volatility. They can be sweet and gentle today, and turn cold and cruel overnight. That shift often happens the moment they're questioned, when the consequences of their behavior become too obvious to ignore. And this isn't just moodiness. This is a defense mechanism. When forced to face the truth, they either explode, disappear, or transform into someone you no longer recognize. That sudden change makes you start doubting your own memory. Did I imagine the person they used to be? But here is the truth. Your job is not to fix them. Your job is to free yourself. Because no matter how compassionate you are, how many chances you give, or how deeply you love them, they won't change. Not because they can't, but because they don't believe there's anything wrong with them. The idea of growing up, of taking responsibility, of choosing stability over chaos, holds no appeal for them. Because the very behaviors that destroy everything are the ones that make them feel alive. And you need to see this for what it is. This is not just a bad habit. It's a way of life, and if you stay too close, it will pull you down with them. Practicing stoic detachment in this case doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means protecting your inner peace. Understanding that compassion does not require you to become collateral damage in someone else's emotional disaster. You are not obligated to fix what they continually choose to break. And if anything, in this video struck a painful chord, know this: you are not alone. You are not too sensitive. You are not crazy. You've simply seen behind the mask. Now you know the truth, and with that truth comes power. Don't wait for more damage to unfold. Protect your peace. Trust your instincts. And if you're ready to take back control of your life, hit subscribe now. This channel is your space to heal, to grow, and to stay one step ahead of the manipulators. Join this community, because once you see clearly, no one has the right to make you question your reality again. You've got this, and we are right here with you.